The New England Patriots have hired Mike Vrabel, and I don't like it. I'll explain why on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to another edition of the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the mastermind, Ross Jackson. On today's episode, we're of course going to dive into these playoff games. The Buffalo Bills are built tough. The Ravens keep rolling and the Eagles bully the Packers, but we got to start with the first head coach hire in the NFL. The New England Patriots finally make their move. Before we get into it, though, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the season with a big return, the postseason with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win or lose that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And thanks again for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. But Ross, like I said, the Patriots make their move. First person to hire a head coach.
Yeah, it sounds, and the most I can say about it, Tyler, is that Mike Vrabel's going home.
He sure is. My guy Mike Debate from Locked On Patriots broke down the big news.
The New England Patriots are hiring Mike Vrabel as their 16th head coach in franchise history for one main reason. They prioritized experience over potential. I'm Mike Debate, host of Locked On Patriots, and Patriots Nation will forever have an affinity for Mike Vrabel. Well, now he's going to get that chance to guide that franchise back to respectability. Not an easy task, but Vrabel does have the experience for it. In 2018, he was named the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, led the Titans to 2 AFC South titles and 3 playoff berths. Some of you out there right now are wondering whether or not a younger, more innovative play caller on offense, like Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, might have been a better fit for the Patriots long term. But for right now, for a team that is currently in desperate need of direction when it comes to building a program, when it comes to correcting countless mistakes on football fundamentals, Mike Vrabel may prove to be the safer and more prudent choice at this time.
All right, Ross, let me say this. I get it. Mike Vrabel's a good head coach. The media loves him. They slurp it up. They absolutely love Mike Vrabel all the time. He's great, this and that. And I get it, all right? Going back home to the Patriots totally makes sense. But again, I don't like it, as I said to start. Let me explain why. Number one, Mike Debate there talks about building a program. Mike Vrabel never built a program in Tennessee. People forget that the Titans went 9-7 and won a playoff game. That's the team Mike Vrabel took over. He has never built a program from the ground up, foundationally on a bad team with a bad roster. He's never done that.
Yeah,
I don't think that he's
point.
equipped to do that. Also, putting Mike Vrabel with a young, impressionable quarterback like Drake Maye, who needs the fundamentals and needs all of this help to become the player that people think that he can be and that I think that he can be. He looked fantastic. Drake Maye has a lot of potential. Mike Vrabel is not a quarterback's best friend. He's not a good coach for a young quarterback. That's one of the reasons the Titans wanted to move away from him. And I remind people that although Mike Vrabel is praised to high heaven like he's some, God's gift to football, 3 out of his 6 seasons in Tennessee, the Titans were 26th or lower in scoring. He doesn't hire good offensive coordinators as well. That's not something he can do consistently. So what's he going to do? Hire Josh McDaniels? Hire Bill O'Brien? Hire Tim Kelly? Again, he's going to kill Drake Maye. He is not a good – they should have went and got Ben Johnson, and I think he would have taken the job. I think Mike Vrabel will do fine, but this move isn't anywhere near as good as everyone's pretending. Sorry, I'm off my soapbox.
No, you're good. Because I'm with you. I think that Mike Vrabel's a good coach for a team that needs to rebuild a culture and that has a veteran roster. It's one of the reasons why I didn't hate the idea of him here in New Orleans covering a coaching search here with the Saints.
Jacksonville, I thought made sense.
Jacksonville would have made a lot of sense too. I completely agree with you there. But the way that I know that Mike Vrabel is not the greatest fit for the team when it comes to New England is that everyone's celebrating it because he played there before, and that's it. That's what everybody's big shining star around this hire is that he was a linebacker there once. And if
Yes.
that's the narrative around it, yeah, and you can't actually pinpoint why it is that he is good for that team, then I have concerns for that team.
Yeah, he's not a good defensive coordinator. That's written in history. 2020 Titans defense. The year before, 2017 Texans defense was 32 in the NFL. Like, he needs schematic wizards around him. He's good with the in-game management and stuff. But, yeah, I think with a young quarterback, they'll be fine. Like, they're not going to be a disaster most likely. Yeah. But I think the ceiling of the team is definitely capped with Mike Vrabel at head coach, and nobody wants to talk about it. But I will, Ross. Yeah. I will. But absolutely. With that being said, go ahead, Ross. If you got more,
I was going to say I want to call the New England Patriots out on their Rooney Rule checkoffs real quick of interviewing Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich way before they got started all this, knowing dang right well they were going to go down the road with Mike Vrabel. Listen, I know they had to do those interviews. I get it, but piling them on two guys that have been out of the NFL for a couple years and checking those boxes right off the back, that was a pretty pathetic display.
Yeah, that was terrible for sure. I perfectly said. Now, I do want to move on to these games this weekend, and while all of the games weren't necessarily barn burners like we were hoping, we definitely got a great one to finish off the weekend. We got the Monday night matchup ahead, but the Washington Commanders, comeback kids, win the playoff game on the road against the Buccaneers. Get the walk-off field goal at the end and a comeback. Great stuff. My guy David Harrison from Locked On Commanders broke down the win.
Another week, another last-minute win, and the Washington Commanders are headed to the divisional round of the playoffs. This is David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast, following a 23-20 victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The number 6 seed in the NFC is going to head over to face the number 1 seed in Detroit next week. Detroit Lions coming up next. Jayden Daniels, of course, the leading passer, obviously as the quarterback of the Washington Commanders, but also the leading rusher, leading a clutch 4-minute offense drive at the end of the game where Zane Gonzalez not really nailed, but doinked his game-winning field goal in to send the Washington Commanders to the second round of the NFL playoffs. We'll have all the coverage of this game and everything else going on with the Commanders over at the Locked On Commanders podcast, 5 days a week, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The mistakes just bit the Bucs in the worst moments.
Yep.
The fumbled snap, and then they kind of botched the snap there on their last third down, and they never get it back. It's just crazy how these little things are just so critical in these games. These playoff games are swung by a couple of snaps.
Yep, and especially in late game environments like that, because you look on the other side, Jayden Daniels goes 9 of 15 for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns in the third and fourth quarters in these games. Mm-hmm. So while one quarterback's game, or really not just the quarterback, while one offense's game rather is tightening up and getting more efficient, the other offense was succumbing to mental errors, things like that, those turnovers, some of that. It just goes to show you how you mentioned, those one plays that could separate all these situations. Those in the in-game situations on, at max are absolutely maximized. So I think you saw both of those sides take 2 different directions late in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy to me that it was the rookie in this game who was more cool, calm, and collected and composed down the stretch over the erratic Baker Mayfield. And quite frankly, Baker Mayfield has been good all year, but he's been erratic all year. I think back to 3 interceptions in a second quarter against the New Orleans Saints earlier in the year in a game that they put up 50, but it was like Baker was just, back and forth. And I think that's Baker Mayfield's a good story. He's a lovable character, but I think sometimes people overlook kind of the erratic nature of his play. And, he even pointed to himself, and maybe that's just quarterback stuff, but he took the blame for the snaps. And I think that, those little mistakes, it just killed him. And honestly, the Bucs were the better football team, but they made the mistakes, and the better quarterback probably was on the other sideline. And that's how you lose a game. But with that being said, the Philadelphia Eagles bully the Green Bay Packers. The Buffalo Bills are built tough, and the Baltimore Ravens just keep on rolling. We're breaking down a great wild card weekend. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in with the strongest hiring data available. LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates and gives you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are always wearing so many hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data that you won't find anywhere else, from unique skills and interests to connections that you share. LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high quality candidates. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where Prize Picks comes in. If you love football, you want a chance to win real money while watching games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. Prize Picks has got you covered. That's why they have over 10 million members and billions in winnings. It's clear that people are loving Prize Picks. I've been playing for a while now. I'm having a blast. I'm looking at Jared Goff, more than 230 passing yards, maybe Saquon Barkley for more than one touchdown. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Ross. Let's continue today's wild card edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Talked about the Vrabel move, talked about the best game of the first 2 days so far. That was definitely the Commanders' win over the Buccaneers. But we got the Philadelphia Eagles bullying the Green Bay Packers. Before that, it was a defensive-led effort, according to my guy Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles.
It wasn't always pretty, and the Philadelphia Eagles needed their defense to bail them out, but I actually think this is a great lesson in their first playoff win over the Green Bay Packers. 22-10 the final score. I'm Louis DiBiase, host of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Obviously, it goes without saying, Jalen Hurts, the passing game, Kellen Moore's play calling, they have to be better if this team wants to at least make it to an NFC championship, let alone a Super Bowl. But I like that they had to win a physical, close game. Reminded me a lot of that 2017 playoff matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, where the defense has to save you. I think they set the tempo from the start. 3 turnovers on defense, a 4th turnover as well in special teams. The 2 MVPs, to me, Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. A 3rd and 3 stop by Jalen forces a turnover eventually on 4th down in a 9-point game. Still a lot of time left. Nolan Smith, 2 sacks today, a pick from Quinyon Mitchell. The curse is broken. Slay gets a pick. Bond gets a pick. This defense, they won you that game.
He's absolutely right. The one thing for me is there was a decisive difference in the level of physicality from these teams. The Eagles, that's why I say that they bullied the Packers, because the Eagles just physically outmatched this young Green Bay Packers roster. They had no answer. And, Louis pointed it out because Louis excellent, of course. He's doing great work there at Locked On Eagles. But Jalen Carter was so good. And when Elgton Jenkins got knocked out of the game, he's the Packers' best offensive lineman. And look, they can make I don't want to say subpar because they're a good offensive line, but it's not like they have top-tier offensive line talent. They are well coached on the offensive line. They get the most out of late-round picks. But Jordan Love being so good at avoiding sacks allows that offensive line to be so good. And once Elgton Jenkins went out, Jalen Carter just ate that offensive line up. That was the big difference to me.
Yeah, the other big thing for that Green Bay offensive line is that for most of the season, they've all been on the field together. And so I think that the continuity has helped them a lot. Then all of a sudden, when you lose one piece and the stakes are high, that's where things get to be a little bit more kind of catastrophic for you, if you will. And we certainly saw, look, if it wasn't for Justin Herbert's performance on Saturday, we would be talking about Jordan Love's quarterback performance as the worst quarterback performance of the weekend.
Yep. Yeah, I think Jordan Love is a guy that's going to be interesting to monitor going forward because he had such a great playoff run last year. The Packers were looking great. Everybody had high hopes. They give him the big contract. But if you look deeper into the numbers here, I'm gonna read some stats from Brett Coleman on Twitter, Underdog Fantasy. He said Jordan Love's stats on true dropbacks this season, including today in the playoffs, Sunday, non-play action, non-RPO, non-screen pass attempts, just drop back passing attempts. 57% completion, 15 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, 77.6 rating. Those are bottom 7 numbers for all 32 starters. Jordan Love, when he just has to be a drop back passer, has not been good enough. And look, I want to give him a little break. They had their 5th, 6th, 7th wide receivers out there. But Green Bay is touted for their wide receiver depth. So they got, Romeo Doubs goes out with the concussion. Watson obviously missing with the knee. Jayden Reed gets banged up with the shoulder. Like, I get that that's hard to overcome, but you act like you have this big stable of wide receivers and you want to do money ball at the wide receiver position and not have a star receiver. Like, this is what you get.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're not investing in the position, you have to know that you're going to lack when it comes to depth. The Eagles also taking away everything less than 10 yards, or excuse me, more than 10 yards downfield for Jordan Love as well. So not only was he operating, outside of his scheme or failing while trying to operate outside of the stuff that's schemed up for him, only 3 of 11 for 58 passing yards and all 3 interceptions when he went more than 10 yards downfield in terms of air yards. So the Eagles just ate him up.
Yeah, and with the Fangio defense, you're going to see a ton of too high shell. So it makes sense that he was having trouble with that. It's going to be hard to do it anyways. So think about what we just said. Money ball at wide receiver, where you're not really investing heavily in the position other than a quantity standpoint. Offensive line, we're talking a bunch of late round picks, blah, blah, blah. Like, Matt LaFleur can only do so much to jazz this up. They need to get real talent on offense and quit trying to kind of money ball the thing and hope that Jordan Love's not good enough to raise the ceiling in it.
Yeah, good call.
Like, he's not good enough to raise their ceiling enough. I will say this, though. I'm still not confident in the Eagles. I wasn't overly impressed with their gameplay. Their defense was really good. They played very physical, but that offense still has me shaking my head. They got A.J. Brown reading the Bible on the sideline during the game because that offense is so unholy.
That's outstanding. I think that they still have a long way to go too. And as we're watching all these other NFC teams and we're seeing the way that they're playing, like, all of a sudden, like, they look like the team that has the most to prove out of all those. Like, they're the ones that feel like they have to prove that they belong, not the Washington Commanders, but the Philadelphia Eagles instead.
Yeah, the Washington Commanders are playing with house money at this point. What an incredible season for them. I feel very similarly about them like I do the Broncos. Like, you can't lose, even though it's – but we'll talk about that. Do want to mention the Baltimore Ravens, who absolutely rolled the Pittsburgh Steelers. And my guy Kevin Allstriker from Locked On Ravens talked about that.
The Baltimore Ravens advanced to the divisional round with a big 28-14 wildcard win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm Kevin Allstriker, the host of Locked On Ravens, and that is how you do it. Baltimore dominates Pittsburgh on the ground. Derrick Henry has 186 rushing yards and 2 scores. Lamar Jackson has his fair share of carries and yards, and also through the air had 175 passing yards and was dominant for the entirety of the game. The defense stepped up. A little bit of a lapse in the third quarter at times, but Baltimore is able to get Pittsburgh off the field when they needed to. And despite a couple of Russell Wilson big touchdowns, Baltimore never really felt threatened by Pittsburgh. Now they'll have a big opportunity in the divisional round to face off against another good opponent in their quest for a Super Bowl championship. For more on the Ravens and their big wild card win, be sure to check out the Locked On Ravens podcast and subscribe on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
I rode the Steelers to death. I refused to jump out of the car until it was already over the hill. For the last month of the season, I liked it. I'll take Steelers plus 3.5. Steelers are going to make it close. Steelers plus 9.5. That's way too many points. There's no way, but I'm an idiot. The Steelers, I hate you. Like, I have nothing else to say about the game other than the Steelers fooled me again, and I deserved it.
Can we just show a little bit of love to Derrick Henry? 26 carries for 186 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns in this
first ballot
game.
Hall of Famer.
Insane, dude. Insane. Everyone wrote him off going into the season. Not everybody, but lots of people wrote him off going into the season, and look at what he's still doing in January. Insane.
Yeah, I think I know that the running back position, like the stats for running backs in today's era, are never going to rival, Emmitt Smith and the 22
Sure.
and stuff like that. Like, never going to get close. Derrick Henry is a top 10 running back of all time. I don't care about the rushing yard numbers. I don't care. He is incredible. I agree with you. In my notes, I hate the Steelers, and Henry is a Hall of Famer first ballot. That's all I have, folks. So, with that being said, final games of the weekend. The Houston Texans finally look like the Texans.
Hey.
And the Buffalo Bills, they're built Buffalo tough. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From upsets, big upsets too, to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are simply better with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, money line, spread, over under, player props, so much more. I was watching that Steelers game on Saturday night with a bunch of buddies. That George Pickens final garbage time touchdown made me hit my parlays. It was so great. FanDuel is excellent, and you can visit FanDuel.com right now to join today. And again, you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, football fans, time to cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. It's a wild card weekend recap now. Just so you know, afternoon edition of Locked On NFL, the barber himself, the OG, Tony Wiggins, he's going to be breaking everything down too, get his take on the playoff games. It's always excellent. And then getting you ready for Monday Night Football, our final wild card playoff game. And then, of course, I'll be back with you guys tomorrow with Lauren Cox to break down that action. But make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. But Ross, we moved to the Buffalo Bills dismantling the Denver Broncos, really. It was just, a complete outmatching by them. And my guy, Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, solid as such.
The Buffalo Bills defeated the Denver Broncos 31-7 and advance to the divisional round of the playoffs. We got the result and the performance I was hoping to see. Defense showed up, the run game was dominant, and Josh Allen did special things. So many good things from this game. If you listened to the podcast last week, you knew that I had some confidence in the Bills being able to run the ball against Denver, and they were terrific. Over 200 rushing yards. They dictated this game because of how they ran the football. The catalyst, James Cook. 22 carries, 120 yards, over 5 yards per carry, had a touchdown run.
I mean, that's the ball game. That's 210 rushing yards from Buffalo to 79 for the Broncos. Yep. James Cook, 120 yards and a touchdown. Buffalo was just a more physical team, a better team. They kind of just pushed Denver around for most of the game.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Denver just kind of came into this game as hey, we're happy to be here kind of a situation. Yeah. We saw Sean Payton and Vance Joseph arguing on the sideline. It's fine. It's all whatever. That team's got a lot to build off of. The Denver Broncos are going to end up being good and doing well for a while, as long as those guys are still there and Bo Nix continues to develop. But I think you're right. I think it's the run game that comes down to it. You look at the rushing performance of Derrick Henry, like we were just talking about. You think back to the Week 18 game between the Lions and the Vikings, rushing performance of Jahmyr Gibbs, the James Cook, the running back is back in the NFL, and we knew that this was coming because more teams were going to more two-back formations and things like that, shifting away from forcing defenses to go smaller. So now they want to get bigger and more physical, and Buffalo has just done it better than just about anybody else. And so kudos to future New Orleans Saints head coach Joe Brady and what he was able to do with the offense over there. Just excellent work all around when it came to Buffalo. But Denver should not hang its head at all.
I have been preaching all week leading up to the game Denver is win-win. Nothing, they can go get killed by Buffalo, and no matter what, they should feel so happy about their season. But I will say this. The running game was not good. And if you look
That's
at their
been their
offensive
issue,
line, if you look at their offensive line, Garrett Bowles, they're probably going to re-sign him for left tackle. Quinn Miners was an all-pro this season. Ben Powers, big-time free agent signing at guard. Mike McGlinchey, big-time free agent signing at right tackle. Like, there's not really a place on their offensive line where they can significantly improve to fix the run game. Like, their offensive line has been a strength for them all year. And there's not really anybody who it's like, oh, if they replace them, they'll get. So I don't know that their run blocking situation is going to get significantly better, even with a good offensive line and pass protection. So that's just one thing to think about for the Broncos. I think for the Bills,
they need a more dynamic runner. They did already extend. Yeah, they did already extend Garrett Bowles, though.
Oh, okay, great.
That's locked in.
That literally happened like 3 days ago. It happened at the end of the week, didn't it? Last week.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways. Yeah. Because obviously, as a person monitoring free agent offensive linemen, I'm tapped in. But anyways, I just want to make the point with Buffalo because, I'm negative Nancy, whatever. They were 1-5 in the red zone. That's not going to be good enough. And when you don't have a clear winner, like I think they thought Amari Cooper could be that, but Amari Cooper is clearly not anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't have, I believe in the red zone is when your star players, especially on the perimeter, really shine because there's less space and you just got to make a play. It's harder to scheme up open space for mid-level wide receivers. You need a baller, whether it be tight end or wide receiver, to make plays in the red zone. And I just don't know if Buffalo has that right now. It's like the same thing with the Packers. Like, this is by design. They traded Stephon Diggs. They went Moneyball at wide receiver. They tried to correct that path with the Amari Cooper move, but I don't know if it's enough. Red zone issues or something I'm going to be watching for Buffalo because they don't have a star on the perimeter. And Dalton Kincaid has been good, but he's been banged up all year with the knee thing. Is he 100%? He's not quite that level of tight end either. He's really good, but not great. So I just wonder about Buffalo in the red zone when they can't just bully and run for 200 yards on, Baltimore next week. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And then the other thing they should do too is focus a little bit more on running the football in the red zone. If they could run more effectively in the red zone, they do really well between the 20s. But if they ran really well or ran better in the red zone, it would open up their opportunities a little bit more to be able to attack that perimeter because then the defense is going to condense to the middle of the field, things like that. Like, it's a big key in terms of your red zone production to not just have the go up and get it guy, but you got to be able to run the football in the red zone as well, just to diversify your play calling a little bit, keep that defense on edge.
Wait, Ross, did I just hear you say Josh Allen anytime touchdown over 50 rushing yards next week? Is that what
I'm going to have to say? Josh Allen anytime touchdown over 50 rushing yards next week.
I thought I heard you say that. I just wanted to make sure. But anyways, we will move on to what was probably the least entertaining game. I don't know. The Pittsburgh Ravens game was pretty boring other than that garbage time stuff at the end from Steelers. Yeah. But I think it was more of a shocker, though, that the Texans just dominated the Chargers in that way. I mean, Justin Herbert, you get pushed all the way to the back of the line. Lucky you. But the reality is the conversation is Justin Herbert has never done anything of consequence in the NFL. He has great traits, great arm, good mobility, but he has never won a darn thing. And I think for better or for worse, Ross, sometimes certain games just stick in people's minds and it crafts the narrative around you for your whole career. Like, whether it's real or not, perception is reality. And Justin Herbert, I think, has taken a huge public relations hit, a huge stock hit to how people view him from that playoff game. The comeback with Jacksonville, letting that happen, and then this, change the coach, blah, blah, blah. Maybe Herbert ain't that guy.
You know what I'm feeling? I'm feeling the focus on, hey, he's good. He's a good quarterback, but he's never won in the playoffs. I'm feeling that focus on Lamar Jackson slowly shifting over to Justin Herbert. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because look, Lamar just won his playoff game. Not only did he win a playoff game, but he beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that he has not beat very much in his career. Did it twice this year, which is great. But now you're looking over at Justin Herbert and going, wait a minute. We're having all this conversation about the guy that's won MVP a couple of times and could win it again, and how he hasn't done anything of substance. But you're here getting into the playoffs, throwing 4 interceptions. I had somebody say that the third one didn't count. Okay, 3.5 interceptions, whatever you want to call it. Still
Whatever.
not good. You know what I mean? Still a complete
He
meltdown.
choked.
Yeah, it's just a complete meltdown. And so, like, now I'm wondering if we should start having those conversations we were having about Lamar Jackson, who hadn't won anything. Maybe we need to be having those conversations about Justin Herbert, if nothing else, as well, right? Maybe not instead, but as well.
Well, all I will say is, and I know, Ross, people don't care about Justin Herbert like they do Lamar Jackson. So
That's true.
It's
That's
not because the discussions aren't important. It's because no one cares.
That's
Poor
all right.
old
That's
Justin
fair.
Herbert. You know what I mean? Like, he can do whatever he wants over there in Los Angeles / San Diego. Now, half the people watching the game didn't even know they moved to Los Angeles. So that's the problem for Justin Herbert. Maybe the good thing for Justin Herbert. He's never going to take the heat that Lamar Jackson takes, even if everything is equal. You could dive into why that might be the case. I think there could be some theories in there, but I know one of them for sure is that he just doesn't have the draw that Lamar Jackson does.
Yeah, no,
but
that's fair. That's fair.
I do want to look at the Texans.
Shout out to Houston's defense, by the way.
Well, that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
The reality here is I don't trust Houston. They're not back. It's not like they're playing as well as they played last year. The reality is the Chargers handed that game over to them. Their offense wasn't that impressive either. They just got a bunch of turnovers to help them. The Texans are going to get smacked this weekend.
Yeah, I think so too. But I do like what the Texans did. They put together on an EPA basis the 4th best defensive performance of the season.
Great on defense.
Against, and that includes the playoffs and the regular season.
Yep.
But they were awesome over on that side of the football. And I thought that CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans in the passing game did what they needed to do, which was attack the middle of that Los Angeles Chargers defense. They did that to great success. Joe Mixon ran the ball well, helped to ice the game late. I think that, like, those little things that you needed to be able to do were there. I don't know if you're going to find that same level of success next week, but it was a good display, and it was a good showing in terms of them coming out of this wild card weekend.
Yeah, it was a good game. Like, they just played a nice, good game. Nothing too crazy, but I'm just not buying it. You know what I mean? I don't think they're upsetting Kansas City and Kansas City next week. I guess is what it comes down to at the end of the day. But anyways, with that being said, that's 5 parts of Wild Card Weekend. Hopefully we get a real good one on Monday Night Football. I think we have the capacity to get that. But that is going to do it for us today here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Again, make sure that you get subscribed. Stay subscribed. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, with my co-host, the Mastermind, Ross Jackson. And as I tell you every episode, stay safe out there.